and welcome. Women are doing very well in the world of business, in computing, in technology, breaking the glass ceiling in many cases. But somehow it needs to be viewed in the larger social context of India. What are women, or how are women managing to break the real challenges or surmount the real challenges that they face literally on a daily basis? Well, we have with here someone who can perhaps put this whole thing in context and maybe lay out what women need to do in order to become more integral part of the workforce, indeed in part of the as part of the country as a whole. I'm joined by Aruna, Jayanthi, CEO of Capgemini Services in India. Aruna, thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you, Gaurav. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so it's always a pleasure to speak to someone who's obviously can see it from literally a 30,000 feet level, but I don't mean it as a pejorative. I mean that you have the ability to see what the challenges are on the ground as well as what you in the context of your own achievements. So tell us, in the last couple of years, we've become more aware than ever so about the role of women, women's issues, women's rights, perhaps for all the wrong reasons. And at the same time, we've seen a lot of gains being made in the way women have risen in positions of leadership, in positions of power, particularly in the corporate world. How do you see these two worlds, and where do you think we need to focus our energies on?
I think if it's interesting that you said it's a 30,000 view, because that's exactly what I told the people at the conference earlier, that we really have to look at the big picture and not get bogged down by the little details of what happens day to day in a corporate world. There are two views you can take to this. At one level, I agree, women are doing very well in the corporate world. But having said that, there is still something more to be done. There's not enough in the leadership space. There's a strong middle management, but not enough at the senior level.
Considering the number of people who come in?
Absolutely.
Yes.
If you take the number of graduates who come in, especially from technical engineering backgrounds, and then how they rise up to the top, I can speak for the IT industry, but I know it's true everywhere else. Okay, that we need to push the leadership levels for women. But on the other hand, I think it's an isolated pocket. If you take a larger social picture, you're talking about the metros. Okay? You're talking about one or two industries like banking, financial services, and IT. I don't think it's prevalent across every single industry. Maybe a little bit in the consumer products and retail segment, but by and large, there's still a large part to do even in the corporate sector. And there's a large part to do outside of the big metros. So if you take out Bangalore, Mumbai, Hyderabad, Chennai, Delhi, I think there's a lot to do, and there's a lot of social inequalities there in terms of perception around women working in organizations, and women in leadership positions. So I think there's a lot to be done.
Right. So tell me about yourself. I mean, I know you mustn't have faced the same challenges maybe a lot of women face today, but tell us about how you entered the workforce and what were you thinking at that time?
I entered the workforce from a business school, so that's so it was it was the most natural thing to do, to start working, and then once you start, you just if you enjoy what you're doing, you do relatively well, I think. But I don't think it's the same for everybody, because I look at people who join our industry and then I look at their backgrounds and then where they have come from, and then I think that we have a huge battle on our hands in terms of getting people to overcome their prejudices around, okay, I can only work for so many years, and then when I get married and have a child, I have to go back and do something, or will my mother-in-law approve of this, will my family support it? I think there's so many prejudices. I just feel it's a big shame that we educate our women and then we're not able to actually carry them through, to a very successful career.
Yeah, so I've noticed that. I think so between a child and in-laws, I think those are the two critical mid-career challenges that women seem to face.
Absolutely.
And so how are organizations dealing with, or can they do something about it?
I think organizations have to do something. But the truth is we're not doing enough in general. So companies like ours, many others, have very strong programs around, let's say, allowing women to take time off, and I totally encourage that. Okay, I tell people, you want to take a year off, take a year off. It doesn't matter. When you work for 30 years, a year doesn't matter. Okay, but I think it's not just 5-6 people saying it. Every manager needs to understand that and say, look, why will I take somebody who's been out of work for a while? Are the skills up to date? Especially in the IT world, when you can get outdated so quickly. So I think organizations have a role to play in terms of how we encourage people to come back after a long sabbatical. I'm not talking 2 or 3 months. We have a role to play in terms of reskilling them and being committed to welcoming back into the workforce. We have a job to do in terms of educating our managers to welcome those people back. I mean, that's one side of the story. But also on the social side, I think the individual has to be committed enough to want to come back. I mean, it's an easy option not to come back. It's an easy option to stay at home and not face the pressure. I think it has to work both ways.
So what would you tell someone like that? I mean, really year 2, year 3 of a break, and then maybe it becomes that much more difficult to make that move.
The earlier they come back, the better it is. It's easier. But I think if I've seen.
And why should they do it? I think let's ask that question as well.
On why they should come back?
Yeah. Assuming there's no financial imperative.
I'm assuming they have a personal ambition to do something. Okay, if their personal ambition is to stay home and be a homemaker, I have nothing against that. I mean, that's a good choice. So eventually it's down to personal choice. But if one has the capability and wants to work and feels constrained by certain either organization challenges or the family pressure, that's when I say, okay, you've got to stand up and be clear about what they want. I hear people saying, okay, but my mother-in-law doesn't approve of me working. I mean, okay, do something about it then,
right.
But again, I have to say, I'm not saying that everybody should work. It's a personal choice. But at the end, if you want to work, you're talented, and you believe you can make a contribution, there are always ways in which you can come back.
Right. So this is also a scenario or a world where there is surplus labor in a general sense, right? I mean, there are so many graduates still being produced. So, I mean, people who want to come back, or you're perhaps trying to move back, are also competing with an ever-rising or a workforce that seems to be.
No, I don't think that's true. Okay, let's separate the statistics from the reality. Okay, statistics.
Reality is who you can really hire.
Yeah, statistics is large volume of graduates available. Okay, but are they truly employable? Are they truly adding value? On the other hand, there is a serious shortage of talent. I can speak again for IT. There is a serious shortage of talent, especially in the middle to middle levels, let's say. Okay, and if somebody has, let's say, 3 or 4 years work experience and is taking a year's break, is still more valuable sometimes than a fresh graduate, because they're fundamentally being trained, they have worked, they're just taking a break. So I would put a heavy weightage and value and premium on those people if they want to come back.
So let me ask you a more general question. So how's the environment looking overall today for, let's say, a young person? I mean, it may be a young girl or a young boy wanting to enter the workforce and build a career.
I'll sound schizophrenic now, but I think it's both good and bad. Okay. Yeah. As always, for the good people, the sky's the limit.
Sure.
There's plenty of opportunities for the right people. But there are also cases where I know that graduates don't get a job. Okay? That eventually boils down to is our education system then focusing on getting the right skills, the right training? Are we just training people in masses? Are they employable? So to me, it's not being a graduate. It's about how employable is that graduate at the end of the day. Do they have the right skills? If you take the BPO industry, for example, language is a very key requirement there. There's only so much you can train. Okay? The absolute customer service attitude, customer first, no matter what, I'm there to make that work, that attitude. So there are many softer skills which are essential in terms of making a good career and the employability aspect. And when I think our education system doesn't focus enough on some of those things.
Right, and I think that's a good note to sort of conclude on. I mean, I think there's a larger issue of education and society which we need to fix. I think people like you are doing your bit to ensure that at the demand side you manage the problem very well. Thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you.